Hello beautiful people, Stephanie here, and today we're taking a look at half holes for tin whistle. What are half holes? How do you play them? And how do you make sure you get them perfect first time every time? Well, keep watching and you're about to find out. Tin whistles are pretty straightforward instruments. It's a piece of pipe with 6 holes and you blow into the top and sound comes out. But they do actually have some specific characteristics. Tin whistles are usually in major keys and they're in a diatonic scale. And essentially what that means is that there are set notes that this whistle can play. A chromatic instrument, for example, like a piano, has a whole range of keys that you can push to make all these different notes. But the tin whistle is pretty simple and has just 6 holes. So we have a set and limited range of notes we can hit just by covering or opening these holes fully. Half-holing literally means to cover half of some of these holes, and this half-holing is essentially a cross-fingering technique that allows you to hit notes outside of the regular diatonic scale, making the tin whistle much more chromatic. Instead of playing D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and C sharp, and then those relative notes in the next octave, you can actually get all the in-between notes by half-holing as you go up. And there are actually a selection of different ways you can achieve these half holes. So let's take a look at how the fingering works and which might be the best way for you to hit half holes cleanly. Now, half-holing might sound kind of straightforward. All I need to do is cover half the hole and I'll hit the perfect note. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't quite work that way. Some holes on tin whistle are larger than others. So hitting half holes on larger holes might be easier, but hitting that half hole note perfectly on a smaller hole also might be easier for you. This will depend on the size of the bore of your whistle, the size of your fingers, your flexibility, and your technique. And of course, different whistles kind of have different half-hole requirements. Let's take a look at the different ways you can open some of the holes on tin whistle. Now, there are a few different ways you can cover half a hole. Firstly, you can slide your finger backwards and reveal half of the hole from the front or the tip of your finger. This works on any of the top holes here and any of the bottom holes here in the opposite direction. So sliding those fingers back a touch to open half a hole. Sometimes, depending on the length and thickness of your fingers, this can be quite difficult. As you can see, I've got a lot further to slide on this middle finger, and that means curling the finger slightly and using more of the fingertip. This isn't ideal, but it can work for some people. Alternatively, you can push the finger forward and angle it back on the whistle. This hits the whistle at a more of a diagonal, and as you can see, will open the hole. So here is a flat coverage. And if I slide my finger back, you'll see some of the hole opens. This can be useful on a slide as well, to slide into the in-between notes. And then you can judge how much of that hole you need open as you go. Some notes, such as the C natural, are actually pretty common on tin whistle and can be played with cross-fingering. This means putting alternative fingers down rather than half-holing, but you can actually do both. You can either half-hole the top hole for the C natural, or you can put the second and third finger down. So let's take a look at how these half holes sound. Now, the question I often get asked is, what can I do to improve my half holes? Well, firstly, it's worth choosing the technique that you want to use, that you find most easy and most comfortable. Secondly, it's worth learning what those half hole notes are. There's no point in being able to play half hole notes if you don't know what notes you're playing and why you would be playing them. Thirdly, you need to drill those half holes. So even if it's just a half hole scale, which means going up and down the octave, playing against a tuning app, for example, or a physical tuner, and checking back to see how well you're playing those notes, if you're not doing things like that when you first start out with half holes, you can't really expect to play them perfectly every time. So let's try some scales to see if we can improve our accuracy and our pitch. Here we're going to play some scales going up in the lower octave and see if we can match the notes that we need in the pitch perfect range. Practice those scales going up and down your whistle in the low octave, up and down your whistle in the high octave, and see how accurate you can be. The key thing people usually get wrong is they open the hole far too much. Actually, you really don't need to open those holes very much at all. Even that tiny little bit of air that can escape or get through that open hole will make a huge difference to the sound of the note you're playing. So think about opening that hole just a tiny little bit and see if that creates the sound that you're after. One thing people forget as well is that half holing can be completely different if you're playing a different key of whistle. For example, if you're playing a low D whistle, the way that you'll position your fingers is going to be completely different because you're playing with different parts of your finger. When using the piper's grip, there are completely different parts of the finger covering the holes on this low whistle. You'll need to roll those fingers back, and where the hole is covered on the knuckle of the finger, for example on my first finger, we'll need to roll this finger back in order to open the hole. Now, low whistles have larger holes in general and the spacing is much wider. This can make it easier to open a small amount of the hole, but you might find that the larger holes are actually difficult or more difficult to control. In this case, sometimes if you need to open a hole by sliding backwards, you might find that easier on a low whistle, or even sliding downwards slightly on the middle finger, which can open a small amount of hole a lot more easily than rolling back. It might also depend on the specific finger. You might find that opening the top or bottom of a hole on a low whistle is much easier than opening the side or the back. So you could slide up, slide down, roll forward. All of these are valid ways to open the holes on your tin whistle, and it will depend on, as we've said before, the size and shape of the holes on your whistle, the thickness and flexibility of your fingers, and where you personally find most accuracy. Let's try that same technique for low whistles. You'll notice that it was a lot more difficult to hit that perfect tuning on the low whistle, and it didn't enjoy the half holes as much. It is a little bit more difficult sometimes on a whistle with larger holes or with a larger bore size to hit the breath requirements and those fingers perfectly to hit those pitch perfect notes. But in most cases you won't need to hold half holes for long notes, and they're more of an in-between sort of note, so you can usually get away with it not being absolutely spot on. The best thing to do is ensure that you know on your whistle how much each hole needs to be opened in order to play a note that will register as the right note to a listener. Practicing alongside a tuner will help train your ear to hear those pitch-perfect notes and train your fingers and your breath control to play those pitch-perfect notes as well. So why not level up your tin whistle playing by including half holes and chromatic notes on your tin whistle? Best of luck, and don't forget, if you have comments, questions or suggestions, please do leave them down below. I love hearing from you guys. I hope this was helpful. If you'd like to try out some of my other technique videos, I'll put up a selection on screen for you now. Thanks for watching, happy whistling, and I'll see you guys again soon. Bye!